Verse 411. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my paths in all respects, O son of Partha.
This verse is talking about inclusivity. All people are on my path. So we'll talk about this theme of exclusive, inclusive, and talk about being open-minded, broad-minded. That's the broad theme I'll discuss today. So we could say that the various paths in the world, they can be of broadly three different kinds. If you consider a pendulum, one is exclusivist, that our way is the only way. And this is often the idea of many religious paths. We won't go into specific names over here, but ours is the only way. Now, this often leads to narrow-mindedness. And it is also logically questionable. If God is unlimited, why should the path to Him be limited? So, or why should there be only one path to Him? But then we can have the other extreme. I'll tell why we call it extreme. This is pluralist, and that only my way, that's exclusivist. Now, when I'm using the word pluralist, this is something like always lead to God. Now, while this can seem open-minded, and the word pluralist is not a bad word, and I use it for lack of a better word, but this may or may not be open-minded. To explain this, if we consider, say, a mountain, and say the bottom of the mountain is material consciousness or material reality, the top of the mountain is spiritual consciousness. So now we could have one path of the mountain, we could have another path of the mountain, we could have a third path of the mountain, we could have a fourth path of the mountain. We can have many paths of the mountain. But that does not mean that all paths lead to the top of the mountain. Some paths may go like this. Some paths may be just going around the mountain. Some paths may be going away from the mountain. Some may be going into the valley. So to say that all paths, without any criticism, without any evaluation, lead to the same goal, that it might seem open-minded, but as it is said, be open-minded, but we shouldn't be so open-minded that our brains fall out. So this could very well be not open-minded, but empty-minded. There's nothing left in between. And then what the Gita teaches is something in between. It is what is inclusivist. Inclusivist means that there is one purpose and many paths. So one purpose is to rise from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. But there are many paths to go up the mountain. So now, say this part is a little bit more rocky. So it might be suited for some people. This part might be a little more slippery. That might be a little more suitable for some people. Different people. Each path will have its challenges in going up. But different paths may be suited for different people. That is different from saying that all paths are the same. That all paths lead to the same goal is taking things too far. So when Krishna in the Gita is saying that there's one purpose and many paths, and that's why in this verse there are two things. I'll just conclude this and then you can have your reflections. That what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita is that two things. That there is a principle of reciprocity. As all people approach me, I reciprocate with them. And universality. All people are on my path. That means that everybody is in one sense searching for the ultimate reality. Everybody is searching for what really counts. Now, they may not be consciously aware of what really counts, but they're all searching for that. So if you consider this to be like an ocean of water, and from here, there's slowly we're moving towards a desert. So now here, there are people who are searching for water. Now you could say, if there's somebody over here, now from the ocean, a drop of water might fall here. And because of the wind, a drop of water might be here. A drop of water might be here. Now, all drops of water, they come from the ocean. Hmm? But all drops of water don't take people to the ocean. Hmm? If somebody takes this drop of, pursue this drop of water, then they are not going toward the ocean. If somebody pursues this drop of water, then also they may be going, they're not exactly going toward the ocean. So if they pursue this drop of water, they're going closer toward the ocean. So all drops of water come from the ocean, but all drops of water don't go close to the ocean. So like that, Gita says everything that attracts us, it comes from Krishna. And whatever we are pursuing, some of us may pursue wealth, some of us may pursue beauty, some of us may pursue power, some of us may pursue reputation, some of us may pursue health, some of us may be foodies. We all have different interests, different hobbies, different passions, different cravings. So whatever it is that is attractive. So Krishna is like this ocean. And these drops of water are like attractive things in the world. So all these drops of water, they are like the various attractive things in the world. And they all, in one sense, come from Krishna. But they all don't take us to Krishna. So reciprocity means that Krishna says that if somebody chooses to reciprocate with me, they will come closer to me. If they reciprocate with somebody goes to the drop of water which is far away, and they will go away from Krishna. So there is universality, but universality and reciprocity. I spoke a lot of concepts. So maybe rather you can speak some things.
I'd like to take you back.
Yeah, please.
We were talking about exclusivist.
Yeah.
And inclusivists and pluralists. So I think it's also very important to understand why people are inclusivists and exclusivists and pluralists.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very, religions and any concepts and any communities that grow, they all have a certain component to their community where they want growth, and they have certain objectives of growth or exposure in the world, and so therefore it really enables them and helps them to use one of these strategies. For example, there are communities, they just want a lot of people to get into the community, and you just open the doors for everybody to do whatever they want to do. Like in India, there's a few philosophers, the jatamat tatapat, as many opinions, that many ways.
Yes.
And so there are because they want to sound very inclusive, and as a result, everybody feels, whatever my idea is, that's perfect, it's accepted, and they take that to be the absolute fact. So we have to understand very important principle that all these concepts, they may sound very good, and there is tons of those in the world today where they claim that theirs is the best, or we are the most unique, or we are the only way. And most people consider that we're the only way. And that's
what you're saying essentially, sorry, it's like there is a philosophical aspect to spirituality, but there is also a psychological aspect.
Correct.
And psychologically, depending on what people prize the most. Say, for example, if somebody prizes certainty, what I am doing is certainly right, this is the way, then often they will go towards exclusivism.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah, that is what they prize. This is right, and that is all that there is to it. On the other hand, if somebody prizes more a sense of respectability in society, how can you be so narrow-minded that you think that yours is the only way? I'm not narrow-minded like that. Those people are narrow-minded. But then they go towards inclusive. not inclusivism, more towards pluralism. Yeah, your path is right, my path is also right, all paths are right. But the essence of spirituality is not based on only our psychology. That my need for security and certainty, or my need to be accepted and respected in society, that alone does not determine spiritual reality. So that's why the psychological aspect, while it's important to understand, it's also important to know that the reality exists beyond the psychological aspect. So I just wanted to make one point. Yes, Vedaprabhu.
So yeah, this was my biggest point, because I have noticed as we travel around the world and we encounter people, and so many people have so many different theories and so many different communities, and it's not covering the full basis of spirituality. It's covering mainly the psychological, and sometimes it's more emotional. So what Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is saying, how important it is to have a holistic understanding of what spirituality is.
Yeah, this holistic aspect is so important, because we have to give up a certain level of certainty to accept that maybe other paths are also right. So in one sense, you could say, in between these two, what we have is humility. Humility is that, yeah, what I know is right, but that doesn't mean that only what I know is right. There may be what other people know also, that there could also be right in that. One of the greatest saints in our tradition, Bhakti Thakur, he is talking about his inclusive spirit in a beautiful way in one of his books called Chaitanya Shikshamrita, and he's paraphrasing him on the Bhagavad Gita. So he says, suppose we encounter a place of worship or a method of worship, and it's unfamiliar, it cannot be worship, unfamiliar form of practice or worship. So what do we do at that time? Do we become insecure? Oh, if these people are doing this, then does that mean I am wrong and I become insecure? And I try to prove that they are wrong. That's how I get my security. He says, no. He says two things. What we need to do is, we appreciate the divine more. And the divine God, whatever name we use for a divine, appreciate the divine that is so compassionate, that the divine is manifesting in this form which is appealing to these people. And so we appreciate the divines, you could say, magnanimity, compassion, outreach. So at the same time, this is what we dedicate to the divine as we know. That means that, oh, the divine is manifesting, that God is manifesting such a beautiful way to these people. I can't comprehend this, but it is that same one God who is manifesting. And therefore, my attraction to the divine as I know it is increasing. It's like if I'm climbing up the mountain from one side and somebody else is climbing up the mountain from another side, and the two of us have a discussion, and they are seeing something beautiful from here, I am seeing something beautiful from here. And just because they are seeing something beautiful from a different path, it doesn't mean I have to think, oh, my path is wrong, and therefore it doesn't mean that I have to go down all the way, I have to go up like this. It doesn't also mean that I have to pull them down, I have to get them down up my path. It just means that we appreciate that I am perceiving the divine from this way, and they perceive the divine from this way. So we appreciate that the divine has created this path which is so divine, but I continue on this path. So this is actually amanina manadena. What Mahaprabhu teaches, respect others, but that doesn't mean we give up our path. So we can respect the path of others, and we can connect or dedicate ourselves to our path more. This is the spirit which can actually help everyone raise consciousness. Otherwise, we try to condemn other people's path, or we start giving up our path because we think, oh, okay, if that path is right, then how can mine be right? Maybe something is wrong with me.
Can we go back to the top, the pendulum?
Okay, so yeah. Yes.
Because
Radhadev, if you want to contribute something, feel free.
yes. Radhadev, you want to go ahead or should I go?
This is just something I appreciate so much about this path. Is to me, when I came in it, and correct me when I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, but I see it like the Veda, like this path. It's like if we want to get from A to B, this particular path provides us like a very detailed roadmap of how to get there with like stop signs and stoplights and trees and landmarks, and it's like very detailed. Some other paths that I've experimented with have been a little bit more zoomed out, not so fine. So like when I'm making a turn, I don't really have my bearings or know where I am or why I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. And to me, that was harder than it was harder to really absorb and to put my whole heart into, because what it did is it left so many like holes in the landscape. So I was trying to read the landscape of knowing when to turn, what to do, but there was just too many apparent holes to me that it was difficult to progress. So I really appreciate in this path that how clearly defined it is and how much literature it is. It's telling you exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and it never loses touch of that main thing, which is love of God. Like we're always looking at that North Star, what we're trying to achieve. So that's something I really appreciated in this path. But I also feel like, I have a husband who's not a devotee, he's Catholic. And
he's a great devotee.
Yes, you're right. Thank you for saying that. I say that all the time, and I always get corrected. But I guess I would say he doesn't identify as a devotee in the way that we do. But we appreciate the levels that we can really connect on, which is like the values, kind of like Arjuna, the first chapter, his love for his family, his being compassionate, loving, really trying to like cultivate those traits, which Krishna points out is a crucial step in spiritual life, is to kind of imbibe those traits and work on those traits. So for my husband and I in our married life, we really view like our spiritual practice is working together to cultivate those traits in a healthy container of a relationship. And that's kind of our dual goal. And in that way, we can really appreciate each other. And also, though we're on different paths, we can go part of the way together. So that's the other kind of reflection that I had in looking at this, because I can't help thinking about, I'm married to someone that's a totally different path than me, and a path that in my experience, I've had some exclusivity issues with. I've really toggled back and forth on this exclusivity pluralism thing. I love that you wrote that. But anyway, so that's kind of how we kind of synergize and come together, and it's actually I've actually come to love Jesus more and appreciate his path more through that relationship. So
thank you. You brought a very important point about universal values. See, every path will have something exoteric or external and something esoteric or internal. So the specific practices may vary, but there are values which are similar. And the ultimate value is the value of love of God. So now both of these are required. Sometimes I say that the exoteric, if that alone is emphasized, we could again have a pendulum. If only the exoteric is emphasized, say the Hindus may offer respects to God by folding their hands. The Muslims may do namaz by raising their hands. Christians may move their hands in namaz. So the exoterics are different. But the esoteric idea is all of them are ways to express our respect and devotion for God. So if there's only the focus on exoterics, then that, if only exoteric is focused on, then that leads to two things. Superficiality, we become superficial, and we can become fanatical. Because my exoterics are different from yours. On the other hand, if there is only the esoteric, it's like, okay, internally I have love for God. But then, how is the internal expressed? The internal needs to be expressed. Otherwise, it just becomes very just merely in the head. It just becomes very conceptual rather than transformational. The esoteric plus exoteric, both are required. Mm-hmm. There is the esoteric, which is universal, and in our particular way, we may practice. So going back to the Bhaktivinoda Thakur's point, he is appreciating the exoteric essence that, it's the same God who is manifesting in a different way. And I appreciate that God who is manifesting. But exoterically, externally, this is the path I'm following. And I will continue to follow this path with greater devotion, with greater dedication.
I think,
so, yes, Vedabhu.
Can we go back to the top pendulum and then we'll come back to the lower pendulum? I want to go to both the pendulums because there's a lot of connection there. We see in the middle of the pendulum, inclusiveness means one purpose and many paths. So this is a very important aspect of bhakti. The mindset of bhakti is we have the ability when we cultivate bhakti to allow everyone the space and the room to grow in their own spiritual practices. So that's something that I find extremely valuable in the practice of bhakti when we get to the a purpose-driven life. And that means living a dharmic life. And if you go to the bottom of the pendulum, when you said exoteric and esoteric, I like to make it simple for me. One is external and one is internal. One is the superficial aspect of life, and one is the internal transformation that happens. So we're talking about spiritual. One is the spirit and one is the ritual. And that's when you combine the spirit and the ritual, and if there is, the action does not have any heart, it doesn't have much substance. So the action needs to have heart. Or if you just have heart and have no action, it won't go very far either. So spiritual really means the combination of our internal and external expressions. And so for me, I'm just trying to make it simple for me, and for those of you out there who like things in a more simple way. I thought it was very nice that this concept is being presented, because there's a lot of emphasis on superficial aspects of spiritual practices in all religions. I've noticed that in Islam, in Christianity, in Judaism, in Hinduism, there's a lot of emphasis put on the superficial things. You got to dress this way, you got to eat this way, you got to talk this way. So there's a huge array of superficial emphasis in terms of cuisine, dress, lingo, and culture, which is fine, but it has to be combined with our internal factor, which is, where is our heart situated? How is the heart connected to the purpose of life?
I love that you brought that point up, Beta, because I feel like, again, this path, the heart component is stressed so much and is so important, which is another thing that when I read this verse that jumps out at me is, like, for God, like, we don't have to do anything like we do in our material relationships, our material life. Like, we don't have to show up a certain way or achieve or be good or bad. We just have to be sincere. And the more that we're sincere and really seeking that relationship in a sincere way, God will reward us. And it's like, it's so almost like, okay, I can do this. This is something I can do. I may not be able to, do this perfectly, or not forget this, or, fit in a certain box, but I can really be as sincere as I can. That is within my control. I can, and that's where the transformation of the heart occurs, and that's what I feel like is so stressed in this path.
And also,
Just
more
to continue this point, sorry, just 1 minute. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the same saint in our tradition, he uses these two words, essence seeker, in Sanskrit is saragrahi, and a bharavahi. So those who focus only on the externals, it becomes a burden that they have to carry, and they get others to carry, and it doesn't lead to much growth. So we don't want to be burden carriers.
Weight carrier.
We want to be essence seekers. The internal essence is common, and to the extent we can focus on the essence, to that extent we can't avoid differences, we can't eliminate differences, but we can definitely minimize differences. Much of the intolerance, sectarianism, and violence that characterizes the world today is because the externals are overemphasized to the point where anyone who does not comply with my externals is rejected, is condemned, is demonized. So that is where sorry, go ahead.
Essence seekers are generally people who are very accepting. They have really operate from the space of acceptance of themselves and everyone else in the world. And they're able to have a global vision, a universal spiritual vision. Thereby, they see how we're all children of God. And it's a very compassionate practice for those who are operating from this essence seekers perspective. Because, in all religions, we have people who are burden carriers, and then there are those essence seekers. And when we look at essence seekers, there's very little difference in all religions. And there's so much similarity, and the differences are so small. And
I'll just the differences, I wouldn't say they're so small, because there are also irreducible differences. And the ultimate analysis, if I consider this path going up, that path going up, there are significant differences. The paths are not the same. As I said, one path might be very rocky, and it requires a whole different set of apparatus for going up. Another path might be slippery. It requires a whole different set of apparatus for going up. Another path might be something else. So there are, the essence seekers, they do not deny the existence of differences, because trying to deny the existence or just saying that those differences are small. Well, there are small differences. I'd say there can be big differences also, but the big differences are not in purpose. The big differences may be in methods. It's like if we consider two different forms of treatment. Let's consider, say, Ayurveda and allopathy. There are not small differences between them. Allopathy and Ayurveda, there are significant differences in how the mechanism by which the body is working is understood. But while there are differences, in the real big thing is the big differences, but the real thing what makes them together is they share the same purpose. That is, to restore people to good health. So similarly, the various traditions, they can have significant differences, significant in the sense that the specific practices may be significantly different. The underlying conceptions may also have some differences. But in terms of purpose, there is one purpose. That is the purpose is to say raise everyone from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness, from loving the things of this world to loving God. Yes.
Could you scroll up a little bit to this formal one? Yeah, this where you say religious practices. Is it not true that the purpose of the external practices is really to cultivate the internal practices? So in that way, they're like interrelated. And I guess for me, like that was something that when I was talking earlier about those holes in the path, like when I was practicing the external practices and I didn't understand really why, it seemed like it wasn't very sustainable for me. It seemed like there was holes in the path. So then coming to realize that the entire purpose of the external practices is to build the internal essence. It was like kind of like an aha moment in life, such that like you could have like a priest in one religion practicing a ritual empty, just like with no real feeling, just kind of doing it just up there, kind of showing off how great he is, versus a priest in another religion practicing a ritual, a totally different ritual, but with a heart full of God. And what's most important, whatever religion it is, the one that's going to be closer to God is the one that has the biggest heart for it. Is that?
Yes, that's a very nice way of putting it. If somebody's practicing ritual, the heartfelt practice is there, then they're actually getting closer. Then another ritual practice, which might also be meant for the same purpose. But if there is only superficial practice, then that person, although that practice may itself be possible to take the person towards the essence, but that person may not be going toward the essence. The superficiality may stop them. Yes, so the essence is something which is shared by everyone. Definitely. Did I depict what you are saying clearly?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So if you were to recap, Prabhu, the whole thing.
Oh, we have some time, Prabhu. It's 40 only till now.
Oh, I thought there were some questions people were asking, so I thought we should
sure, okay.
For questions.
So I'll just make one point, if you don't mind, about those differences. See here, spiritual path, there are similarities and differences. The point here is that it is also important to recognize that the externals are not to be dismissed as unimportant. The externals are often the ways to the internal. And for a particular person who has experienced the divine by a particular practice. So if this is the essence, in our tradition we call that essence as Krishna, other traditions we call other names. Now, if I have experienced the essence through this path, then the externals are also important for me, because those externals are giving me the experience of the internal. And then to say that only the externals lead to the internals. So the problem is not when the externals are minimized. The problem is when the externals are claimed to be the sole way to the internal. That the external is important for me because this is my way to the internal. And in that sense, this is important. But when I cannot accept that there could be other externals which could also get to the same internal, the problem is not, that's why the point I'm making is the externals are not unimportant. The problem is when the externals are made the sole way, that this is the only way. So often fanaticism, what it means is, nobody wants to be fanatical. But in general, most people, even you ask them, they'll say, even if they're fanatical, they won't say, I'm fanatical. But one way to understand fanaticism is, what works for me is the only thing that can work for anyone. When that claim is made, that is when it becomes fanatical. If this works for me, that's great. But when I say that this is the only thing that can work for anyone, and if anybody is doing anything else, they are wrong, they are deviants, they are infidels, and they are condemned. So that is when it is a problem. So what works for me is a fine, okay part, but in the second part, that is the problem. So fanaticism, so what works for me, let's respect that. Okay, it works for you, follow that. But then of course we have to consider what works for me means, and whether it's actually raising a person to higher consciousness. So the external is external in the sense that not that it's unimportant, but the problem is we can always go towards two extremes. Again, I like pendulum, it's unimportant and all important. the externals. But we could say it's an important means to the internals. So, for example, if we consider our teacher Srila Prabhupada, when he came to the West, he was asked, Swamiji, why have you come here? When he says, what are your thoughts about Jesus? Prabhupada says, Jesus is our guru. He had so much love for God that he laid his life down for the service of God. So he's our guru. Many of the people who are from Christian background, they were pleasantly surprised to hear this. But then he says, so is what you're teaching the same as what Jesus is teaching? Prabhupada said, essentially, yes. Then why have you come here? Prabhupada said, because you have forgotten what Jesus is teaching, that you're not giving that essence. So now, in general, if you consider the Bhakti approach, which was embodied by Prabhupada, see, when we are following Bhakti, we have the conviction that this is a particularly accessible path. Like Radha Devi mentioned the point that it's very clearly delineated path. So Prabhupada had two different approaches. If somebody was just a nominal practitioner of some path, that means, going back to the mountain metaphor, that person is somewhere here at the bottom. And they're just nominally belonging to, they're born in a particular religion, but they're not practicing it. One of my friends was from a Jew background, and he tried to share Bhakti with his friends. And his uncle said, are you trying to convert me? He said, I didn't know that you belong to any religion. I thought you were an atheist. He says, yes, but I'm a Jew atheist. Now, what does that mean, a Jew atheist? So that has become become a superficial designation. It's just a bodily designation. It's not a spiritual path. So if somebody is a nominal practitioner, Prabhupada, we encourage them to practice Bhakti Yoga. So if this is the Bhakti path, if somebody is wandering around at the bottom, exploring this, exploring that, just going around like this, they're not really, and say this is the path of Bhakti. And we recommend them to practice this path, because there are many reasons why we can give that. As you said, it's clearly delineated. It's a very potent practice. But if somebody is over here, somebody is already a dedicated practitioner, then the Bhagavad Gita doesn't say, oh, you have to come down all the way and now you have to come from here because this is the better way. What it says, the Gita can give guidance how somebody can go better up their path itself. So learning the Gita can actually help, Prabhupada would say, it can help a Christian become a better Christian. It can help a Muslim become a better Muslim. So dedicated is can more informed practice of their path. So that way, there is both a respect for other paths, and it is important for every practitioner to have that their path has a special place in their heart. And they would like to share their path, but not that they share their path by demonizing or demeaning other paths. Yes. Whether you want to, rather you want to contact something, comment.
So in this hill that you have, like if you scroll down, like in the first chapter, what I was talking about earlier, where like Arjuna is at that intermediate point, feeling lamentation for his family and feeling all those wonderful qualities of compassion and love, he would be like halfway up. Is that what you're saying? Which is something that you can get through the Bhakti path or a different path. You can get there through different paths. But you're saying you could read the Bhagavad Gita and it can take you to the next step as well. It could take you to the intermediate step, but it can also take you fully up the mountain to love of God. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, perfect. Yeah. So from wherever we are, I like to put the Gita's message, is message of inclusivity from your place at your pace. Access the divine grace.
Oh, that's beautiful. Did you make that up?
Yeah, this is my rendering of 4.11.
That's nice.
All people are on my path. From your place, okay, wherever you are, and not some people may want to run up the mountain. They really want to go far. They don't care for anything else. That's the most important thing in their life. Other people, I want to go up, but maybe I don't know. I have other things in life that are also important for me. Okay, so you can go slower up at your pace. But the point is, raise your consciousness, access the divine grace.
Yeah. So can you scroll up one more time to the one above that? And then one more. This one right here, where you talked about the external and the pendulum. If you scroll one down. Yeah. So my interpretation of this is it's like we don't need to focus. We don't need to like categorize the externals as either important or unimportant. We merely need to work to understand the purpose and the context of where the externals are taking us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, perfect.
And that way we can figure out like, okay, these externals of my religious path I actually see from experience bringing me to a higher place, like chanting mantra. Okay, I see that is, and I guess that's not necessarily always external, but we could say it is bringing you higher. But something externally like drinking alcohol, then I can see where, okay, that's bringing me lower. So then it's not a matter of like, is this all important or not all important? Is it good or bad? It's like, what is it doing in the context of where I'm actually trying to go?
Yes, like that's a very good way of putting it. You know that sometimes as soon as you bring in categories of say good or bad, the question becomes who decides, and who are you to decide that this is good and this is bad. So morality can be very much relativized, but what we can say is that is it elevating or is it disintegrating or degrading? Is it raising my consciousness or is it bringing my consciousness down? And that is something which we can experience ourselves. So, and which others around us can also tell us, okay, now somebody takes alcohol. It is not that suddenly a person after taking alcohol starts becoming spiritually insightful and wise. No, it actually removes the normal inhibitions, that the normal restraints that are there on people. And then often our lowest or the worst side comes out. So it can be both. It can be objectively decided what helps us grow and what stunts our growth. So you could say facilitating growth or stimulating growth and stunting growth. So on the bhakti path, the focus is that we accept the activity that stimulate growth and we avoid the activity that stunt growth. And in fact, they do the opposite of growth, they do to regression. So by self-observation and by social observation, both can be decided. We can decide this. What is okay? Yes. Vedapru, you want to say something or should I
It's time for
summarize
recap.
now?
I think we should summarize. I'll hold off.
Thank you. Yeah. So broadly, I started by talking about 3 kinds of path: exclusive, pluralist, and inclusivist. And then talked about how the Gita's teachings are both, they are universal, but they're also reciprocal. That there are externals which are meant to lead us to the internals. And if the externals are emphasized alone, then that can lead to fanaticism. So we discussed about how fanaticism can result from just concluding my way is the only way, or it can also be because I consider that what works for me is the only thing that works for everyone. So my way is the only way. So we can say my way is a valid way, but that doesn't mean that is the only valid way. The mountain metaphor which we use for this purpose. And then discuss a few other points also, but one of the key things was that how we can, there can be respect as well as dedication. This can be respect for others who are going up the mountain another way, but dedication for going on the mountain by our own way. And in that way, we decide what is right and wrong, not just based on some arbitrary criteria, but based on objective criteria. What helps growth and what stunts growth. That's a quick summary. I think a few other points were also discussed, but you want to add something or we want to take a few questions? Energy?
I think there are some questions, rather pretty.
Yeah. I think Nichananda had one.
One question.
I'm still trying to figure out the Zoom, so thank you all for being patient with me. I think I just need to take him off mute.
I'm here.
You're off. Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi.
I don't know if this is a redundant question, but I think maybe you can mind it a little more. Is say you have a tradition that is a tradition or a guru, a teacher who is inclusive presenting. There's sometimes different religious traditions that will say, Krishna's a prophet, Muhammad's a prophet, Jesus is a prophet. But then when it comes down to it, they'll have their own sara, they have their own essence, their own vada or siddhanta or philosophy, which stands as the important or the essential kind of axiomatic focal point. And so how does this presentation of bhakti contrast to because you say, Krishna is a prophet, well then that, Krishna is not saying that he's a prophet, he's saying he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in a sense there, it's not really, it's a inclusive presenting, but it's actually the concept is exclusive. So how would you contrast that? That we are also saying, it's all, we're inclusive, but then we have an exclusive essence or sara or purpose or philosophy.
Yeah. Okay, so two things I would say. That there is definitely a conception of, we could say, hierarchy, and the exclusive sara, there is tattva, there is philosophical reality, and rasa, that is personal experience. So philosophical reality, tattva, and there is personal experience. Now, if we consider in our tradition, we do consider that God has many forms. There is Krishna, there is Vishnu, there is Ram. But we consider Krishna to be the most attractive, Krishna to be the highest manifestation of divinity. Now, that does not mean that we have to deride Ram or others. So the same would apply for each tradition. In terms of personal experience, a person can, and person can naturally feel that the experience that I'm getting from this particular part is special. So now special, like a devout Christian might feel that the passion of Christ, the compassion which he exhibited when he was ready to lay down his life, be crucified, that is at an extremely high level of compassion. That will be the highest. So as long as the tattva, the philosophical reality and rasa are not confused, in terms of personal experience, the divine is big enough to give us, each one of us, that feeling of the complete fulfillment, so that it feels like the highest fulfillment that is there. So that is the personal opulence, the personal speciality of the divine. So each tradition will have its rasa, and rasa is to be respected. In terms of experience, we can't really challenge or counter that experience at the highest spiritual level. Okay, Vedaji, Radha, you add some things?
You wanna get into the philosophical reality? Explain that.
Okay, the philosophical reality, in terms of that, there is one ultimate reality. God, it can be, or we can call it God, we can call it the Param Satya, ultimate reality. A God is the source of everything in the world. So in terms of that understanding, that now exactly how the things of this world have come from God, there could be differences of opinion. But the idea that everything is ultimately emanating from the divine, that is something which is widely accepted. We start with that foundation, and from there we move forwards. So in terms of tattva, that no religion, no tradition is going to say that God is ugly, that God is a weakling. That God, the divine ultimate reality, embodies the greatest strength, the greatest wisdom, the greatest beauty. So there are certain aspects of the ultimate reality that are in that sense universal. So that way there can be similarity But there are differences also. Does it address the question?
Go ahead, Nityananda Prabhu. You can say if he answered it. I have a
I think
little.
it's good.
Go ahead.